Ever get the feeling that the monumental shifts in our world just sort of materialize?
Mm.
Like one day things are status quo, and the next we're talking revolution, fundamental rights, a completely different way of seeing things.
Yeah, it can definitely feel that way sometimes.
Well, today we're going to unpack some seriously potent ideas,
Mm.
the kind that didn't just nudge society, but forcefully redirected its course,
Hmm.
from actual revolutions to the very core of how we understand our place in it.
Indeed. We're plunging into the Enlightenment, a period brimming with intense intellectual energy. It truly was a watershed moment, I think.
A watershed, yeah.
Not just altering perceptions of the external world, but profoundly changing how individuals saw themselves and their relationship to power.
Exactly. And to navigate this fascinating territory, we'll be using a comprehensive overview of the Enlightenment as our anchor. Our goal is to extract the core intellectual currents, trace the significant societal changes they ignited, and ultimately understand the pivotal intellectual transformations of this era and their, well, far-reaching impact across the Atlantic world.
And look for those aha moments.
Yes, those surprising connections that illuminate the bigger picture. Okay, so to get started, where did this surge of transformative thought even originate? Like, what sparked it?
What's truly compelling is that the Enlightenment wasn't an isolated event. It really emerged from the intellectual groundwork laid by the scientific revolution of the 16th and 17th centuries.
The scientific revolution.
Consider this. Prior to that, particularly in Europe, much of the understanding about the universe and our existence was rooted in, well, religious or biblical authority.
Right, that was the accepted source.
But the scientific revolution saw thinkers begin to challenge that, prioritizing reason and empirical observation, direct examination and experimentation as the primary means of understanding the natural world.
Right, we're talking about a move towards rigorous logical thinking to
Mm.
comprehend everything from the cosmos to the intricacies of the human body. No need to name specific scientists, maybe. But the key takeaway is this fundamental shift in how knowledge was pursued.
Exactly, how we know things.
So the Enlightenment then took that same commitment to reasoned inquiry and applied it to us,
Mm.
to the realm of human society.
Precisely. Enlightenment thinkers reasoned that if we can employ reason to decipher the workings of the physical world, why not apply those same analytical tools to understanding human interactions, governance, and the structure of society itself?
Makes sense.
And this gave rise to two central intellectual approaches that characterized the era. The first is rationalism.
Rationalism, okay.
The conviction that reason, rather than mere feelings or ingrained tradition, is the most reliable pathway to genuine knowledge. Thinkers like Descartes, for example, championed the power of deductive reasoning.
So logic and clear, systematic thought moved to the forefront.
Got it.
And the other key approach.
That would be empiricism. This emphasized that authentic knowledge originates from our sensory experiences, primarily through meticulous observation and experimentation.
So seeing is believing, kind of, or experiencing.
Pretty much. It's the idea that we gain understanding by directly engaging with the world around us. Figures like Locke and Bacon underscored the importance of inductive reasoning in this process, gathering evidence first.
Okay, reason and observation, powerful methodologies. Now, a significant area that the Enlightenment engaged with was religion. This must have stirred up considerable debate at the time.
It most certainly did. The Enlightenment thinkers critically examined the long-standing role of established religion, particularly Christianity in Europe in public life.
Right.
A central point of contention for many was the concept of revealed religion, the idea that the Bible and its doctrines were divinely inspired and therefore, beyond question.
That it definitely seems to clash with the spirit of inquiry, doesn't it? If reason is key.
It does. So what was the outcome? Did society suddenly become secular?
Yeah, what happened?
Not entirely, no. While atheism, the complete rejection of religious belief, did gain some traction,
Okay.
a particularly popular alternative among Enlightenment figures was deism.
Deism, right.
This is the belief in a creator god who fashioned the universe, but then ceased to directly intervene in its daily operations. It posited a kind of non-interventionist deity, like a watchmaker god.
Ah, sets it up and lets it run.
Exactly. This often led to a more critical stance on organized religion and its institutions, though.
Interesting. A creator, but one who lets things run their course. Okay, so we have this move toward reason and observation and a reevaluation of religion. But the source also highlights new Enlightenment ideas that profoundly impacted thinking about society. What were the core concepts here?
Right, this is where things become truly transformative, I think. One of the bedrock ideas was individualism.
Individualism.
The focus shifted from collective entities such as the church or the state to the individual human being as the fundamental unit of society. The prevailing thought was that the progress and flourishing of the individual were paramount.
That's a significant change in perspective. It places a strong emphasis on personal freedom and development, correct?
Precisely. And this directly gives rise to the concept of natural rights.
Okay, natural rights. We hear that a lot.
Yeah. The conviction that individuals are born possessing inherent rights that no government or any other authority can legitimately infringe upon. John Locke is a pivotal figure here.
Great.
He argued that these God-given natural rights included life, liberty, and property, asserting that if these rights are bestowed by a higher power, then no earthly ruler can rightfully take them away.
Wow.
This is revolutionary thinking because it fundamentally challenges the authority of monarchs, Divine right goes out the window.
Absolutely. If your rights are inherent from birth, it severely curtails the power of those in charge. And this lays the groundwork for the next crucial idea, the social contract.
Exactly. The social contract theory essentially posits that human societies endowed with these natural rights voluntarily come together to form governments.
Okay, so we create the government.
Yes. And the fundamental purpose of these governments is to safeguard those very natural rights. But here's the truly radical implication.
Yeah.
If a government becomes oppressive and violates rather than protects these fundamental rights, then the people possess the right, even the obligation to overthrow that government and establish a new one that will better uphold their rights.
Whoa.
You can see how this directly justifies revolution by suggesting that legitimate power ultimately resides in the people.
Wow. That's not just a theory. It's a justification for upheaval. So these weren't just abstract philosophical musings. They were a potent call to action.
Very much so.
Okay, so we've explored the intellectual foundations. Now, how did these ideas translate into tangible changes in the real world? The source points to some pretty significant consequences.
Right. If we connect this to the broader historical narrative, the Enlightenment provided the ideological spark for a wave of revolutions across the Atlantic world.
A wave, yeah.
We're talking about the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, and the various independence movements in Latin America.
All of them.
In each of these instances, Enlightenment ideals, the rejection of established traditions, and these novel concepts of political authority played a crucial role in igniting these transformative events. They provided the language, the justification.
So people embraced these ideas about natural rights and the social contract and concluded, our current rulers aren't upholding our rights, so it's time for a fundamental change. That's incredibly impactful.
Absolutely.
And the source also mentions that these revolutions, in turn, fueled another significant development, nationalism. How does that connect?
That's right. As people united to fight for self-determination in these revolutions, it often forged a strong sense of shared identity, a sense of us. This is where nationalism emerges, a feeling of commonality among a group of people based on shared elements such as language, religion, customs, and often a desire for their own sovereign territory. It becomes a powerful force shaping the formation of nations and empires moving forward.
Okay, so the Enlightenment ignites revolutions. And those revolutions contribute to the rise of national identity. That's a massive societal transformation. But the impact wasn't confined to just political upheaval, was it? The source also discusses the expansion of rights. Let's start with suffrage, the right to vote.
Yeah, and what's particularly revealing is how the Enlightenment ideals of liberty and equality, while central to these revolutionary movements, weren't initially applied universally, not even close, really.
Right, so who got to vote at first?
Following the American Revolution, for example, the right to vote was largely restricted to landowning white males.
Okay, pretty small group.
Very small. However, throughout the 19th century, we witness a gradual broadening of suffrage, first, extending to all white males in the early to mid-1800s, and then, after the Civil War, to black males in 1870 with the 15th Amendment. Though, there were many barriers still in place.
Sure, but the legal right expanded.
Exactly. And while various factors influence these changes, the underlying Enlightenment principles of liberty and equality, as articulated in foundational documents like the Declaration of Independence, became a cornerstone of American identity and were frequently invoked to advocate for this expansion.
So those core ideals, even if their initial implementation was limited, provided a sort of ethical framework maybe for future progress. People could point to them and say, What about this?
Precisely, they created a standard to aspire to, or at least a standard to argue from.
Now, another profound change was the abolition of slavery. The Enlightenment's emphasis on natural rights certainly played a role here, didn't it? Seems like a direct contradiction.
Absolutely, a glaring one. Enlightenment thinkers were often vocal in their condemnation of slavery, viewing it as a blatant violation of fundamental natural rights, most notably the right to liberty.
Makes sense.
This intellectual critique fueled a significant abolitionist movement. Great Britain, for instance, outlawed the slave trade in 1807.
Okay, the trade first.
Yes. Now, it's important to consider the broader context, as the source notes. Britain at this time was also the wealthiest nation, and its economic prosperity was increasingly tied to industrial wage labor.
Ah,
So the abolition of slavery also aligned, perhaps conveniently, with evolving economic interests. Paid labor was becoming more central than enslaved labor for their economy.
right. Sometimes moral imperatives and economic shifts can intersect, or maybe one helps the other along.
It's often complex, but the source also emphasizes the crucial role played by enslaved people themselves in the fight against slavery. It wasn't just handed down.
Right. Agency is key.
This is a vital point. The source highlights the Great Jamaica Revolt of 1831.
Okay, tell me about that.
This large-scale rebellion by enslaved people in British Jamaica, though brutally suppressed, had a significant impact. The scale of it, the resistance, it directly influenced Britain's decision to abolish slavery across its entire empire just a couple of years later in 1833.
Wow, so their actions directly led to change.
It was a major factor. It wasn't solely about philosophical arguments in London. The resistance and struggle of the enslaved were a primary catalyst for change. It made the cost of maintaining slavery, both moral and practical, much clearer.
That's a powerful reminder that progress often stems from the agency of those who are oppressed. The Enlightenment ideas provided an intellectual framework, maybe, but the fight for liberation was actively waged by those directly suffering under the system.
Exactly. The ideas gave ammunition, but the fight was real.
The source also touches upon the end of serfdom. How does that fit into this picture? A bit different from slavery, but still coerced labor.
Right. The decline of serfdom, a system of forced labor tied to the land, was also occurring during this period, partly driven by the rise of industrial economies. Like with slavery, serf labor became less economically viable in many places.
So similar economic pressures.
Similar pressures, yeah. However, the source also notes that peasant revolts in various regions, including England, France, and Russia, exerted pressure on leaders to ultimately abolish serfdom. Again, it's often a confluence of economic changes and popular resistance.
Okay, so we're seeing this trend of expanding rights, or at least ending certain forms of oppression, in several key areas. But one major group was still largely excluded from these newfound freedoms, despite the Enlightenment's rhetoric of equality: women.
This is a critical observation and a huge contradiction in practice. Despite the revolutions being founded on Enlightenment principles of equality, women in Europe and the United States were largely denied the newly established rights, particularly the right to vote.
Left out.
Completely in terms of political rights. This glaring inconsistency led to the emergence of a significant feminist movement. Women began to advocate for equality across all spheres of life, including the political. Using those same Enlightenment arguments, often.
Turning the logic back on the men, essentially.
You could say that. And the source spotlights some pivotal texts and events in this early push for women's rights. Let's begin with Mary Wollstonecraft in Britain.
Wollstonecraft, okay.
Mary Wollstonecraft's A Vindication of the Rights of Women was a truly groundbreaking work, published in 1792.
What was her main argument?
In it, she argued with powerful logic that women were just as capable of reason as men, and therefore deserved equal access to education and intellectual development. She directly challenged traditional gender roles that confined women and laid a crucial intellectual foundation for subsequent feminist movements.
Applying reason to gender role. Powerful stuff.
Very. And in France, around the same time, we have Olympe de Gouges.
De Gouges, yeah.
Olympe de Gouges' Declaration of the Rights of Woman and of the Female Citizen. It was a direct and incisive response to the French Revolution's Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen.
Ah, she wrote her own version.
Exactly. She astutely pointed out the hypocrisy of proclaiming rights for all men while simultaneously excluding women. She applied the very principles of the Enlightenment to demand equal rights for women in the newly formed French Republic. Very bold.
Holding the revolutionaries accountable to their own stated ideals? That takes courage.
It certainly did. And then across the Atlantic in the United States, we have the Seneca Falls Conference.
Seneca Falls, 1848. I've heard of that.
Yes, it was a landmark event for the women's rights movement in the United States, organized by figures like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott.
Right.
It was a pivotal gathering where women formally organized and called for a whole range of rights, most famously, perhaps, a constitutional amendment recognizing their right to vote. It marked a significant step in the organized struggle for women's suffrage.
So, even though the initial expansion of rights following the Enlightenment and the revolutions wasn't universal, far from it, actually the underlying ideas themselves provided the framework and the arguments for future movements demanding greater equality and inclusion. It's as if the Enlightenment planted seeds of change that took time and a lot of struggle to fully germinate.
That's an apt way to put it, I think. The Enlightenment wasn't a magic formula that instantly created a perfectly equitable world,
Clearly not.
but it did introduce a powerful new way of thinking about individuals, their inherent rights, and the legitimate role of government. And these ideas continued to fuel social progress, debates and movements for centuries afterward. They're still potent.
Okay, so to bring it all together then, the Enlightenment was far more than just a collection of old books and abstract philosophical debates.
Much more.
It was a period of intense intellectual ferment that profoundly reshaped how people viewed themselves and the world around them. It provided the foundational ideas that directly sparked major revolutions, challenged existing power structures, and initiated the long and ongoing process of expanding rights for many.
Even if that expansion wasn't immediate or all-encompassing?
Right. Not at all.
Precisely. The fundamental shift, if you had to boil it down, was this movement away from external, unquestioned authority, be it religious or political, towards individual reason as the ultimate arbiter of truth, or at least the primary tool.
Reason takes center stage.
Yeah. And the radical consequence of that was the understanding that governments derive their legitimacy from the consent of the governed and are responsible for safeguarding individual freedoms.
The social contract idea.
And if they fail in that fundamental duty, the people retain the right to seek a better form of governance. That's the kicker.
Truly transformative stuff. So, considering the Enlightenment's profound emphasis on reason and individual rights, it prompts us to consider, well, how do those very ideas continue to shape our contemporary debates? About freedom, equality, the proper role of government today? Are there still deeply ingrained traditions or assumptions in our own time that warrant a rigorous re-examination through that same lens of Enlightenment principles?
That's the enduring question, isn't it? Does that spirit of critical inquiry still apply?
It certainly gives you something to ponder.
Yeah.
A lot to think about there.